hit the opening. Oh well, we'll just start without the opening. Oh, good Friday afternoon. It is Friday evening, I should say. Shamrock Shakes are all gone. It's their traditional doctors, Don and Dwight. Jeff is out doing family time,
All right.
and
So Dwight, I mean, I haven't tested it today. Are you going to do what you did before? Test the
yes,
McDonald's to see?
I went to the one over in Monkey Mall, and they did not have Shamrock Shakes.
Okay. I
So,
I I
but I'm
meant,
gonna
I
see
meant
online. I need to check online because they're
yeah,
probably available maybe online.
I meant to check the ones on my app because I've got three within a 2 mile radius of my home.
hmm
So, but didn't quite get around to it today.
Well, as Brian once said, they probably pour everything out the drain at 12:01.
Yeah, well, that would be just kind of goofy. But then again, some of these things are goofy. I mean, they're franchises. I mean, they have certain rules they got to follow. But what's if the
What?
sh- if the sham to me if a product is selling well, and I don't know, I assume it sells well enough if they keep bringing it back every year.
Yeah,
Why not let it go a little bit longer? It
I agree. I totally agree. Why not? It's
yeah.
one of those things. It's like McDonald's does it. They had an orange creamsicle shake ways back, and they basically kept it around for the summer, and then it never came back.
Yeah, see, now
And
that
it's
orange creamsicle, I mean, that's like from my youth.
that's
I
what
would love that to death.
yeah, and that's why I like the Chick-fil-A lemonade thing. It's kind of like a lemon creamsicle.
Yeah.
Uh, which we know that's Jason Trott's favorite item at the Chick-fil-A menu is the frozen lemonade.
That frosted lemonade thing, if I don't really feel like a shake,
Mhm,
that is like the next best thing,
mhm.
and I will order that. I'll order that many more times than I probably would a shake just because it's different. I mean, and it doesn't
It's
have
a
any
healthy
calories.
alternative too.
It's a darn good product. So at least they keep that on. But I think this must have been a big hit for them on the menu.
Yeah, and like I said, I think it's also a nice healthy option. Like a to an alternative to a milkshake. Like you've got also things like Slurpees,
Yeah,
and ices.
saying healthy option at a fast food place is always kind of tricky.
Well, I mean it's healthier than a milkshake. I
Healthier,
think
yeah. Yeah,
you
I
know.
mean, all those places that when they went to salad route, it's like, well, once you put a bunch of stuff on your salad, it's really not low calorie.
But I don't know if you remember, there was a time when McDonald's had salad bars. Actually, I think all the fast foods places used to have salad bars.
Well, I
Roy's had
remember
it.
I remember Wendy's had one, right? Didn't Wendy's
Yeah,
have something like
Bob's.
that? I never saw one at McDonald's. They were never really set up for, but at McDonald's, they were selling the kind of their packaged salads. I mean,
Yeah,
that was
the one that was
that's
giving
easy.
people typhoids in the 80s.
Yeah, that's easier than running.
No,
That's easier
the
than
one in
running.
the McDonald's in downtown Silver Spring on Pershing, which is now not there anymore. That was the infamous typhoids, where people got typhoids from eating there. And yeah, that was the one closest to Blair High School. A lot of people went there.
So my favorite thing growing up,
hmm
was the Fixins bar at Roy Rogers
hmm
because you
They
just had
had,
all kinds of stuff and you could just throw all kinds of stuff on your burger or whatever. It was great.
and here's something very interesting. Making a slight transition is that we've got coming up next week is Anne Arundel County has their Lincoln Day dinner, and their speaker is a great speaker, Ambassador, Governor, Attorney General, former RNC Chair Jim Gilmore, and I think he's like the perfect speaker for the perfect time because he's going to be talking a lot about Ukraine, and I think it's people should people who are fascinated or interested in the whole Ukraine, Russia, Europe, they should definitely attend because it's well worth the price of admission. Only $125, and I think it's really great for people to come on out and meet Jim Gilmore. It's a great event they're putting on. So
what's the venue, Dwight?
it's actually not going to be all the way out in Glen Burnie like it was last time. It's going to be at the Crown Plaza, Annapolis, which is
Oh,
great because I
that's
think,
that's easier to find and get to.
yeah. Oh, it took me almost 2 hours last time to get there. But yeah, I just want to do that plug. Links
That's a
there.
good plug.
AAG, yeah,
Yeah, no,
AAGOP.
yeah,
Help Dr. Trot.
yeah. I think that's a good thing. And yeah, I mean, at times, when you're selecting your Lincoln Day, speaker, you don't really know. You can't predict what events will occur.
Yep.
I mean, when things are more stable, you can put almost anybody up there, and especially if it's a politician and
Hmm.
a decent crowd. I think, yeah,
Yep.
even though Gilmore hasn't been the governor for a number of years and and things like this, he stayed involved, and he's a pretty smart guy, pretty
Yeah.
perceptive guy, and the times are now where you can say, yeah, let's a veteran guy like that. What has he seen? Where are we going with all of the
Hmm.
time? So yeah,
Yeah.
I think others that are looking at Lincoln Day dinners, if they haven't picked up their speakers, they should look at people who've got some of this deeper
Hmm.
knowledge to
Yeah.
try.
And we've had him in Montgomery
So
County as a Lincoln Day dinner speaker a few years ago, and I
yeah,
remember that was the Lincoln Day dinner where we ran out of food. We had over 250 people there, and it was crazy. I mean, John Midland picked uh, then Governor Gilmore up in his Bentley from his home in Old Town and back, drove him back and forth. And the governor, or the one thing about him, and Governor Allen did the same thing when he came and spoke to us a couple years after that. They Jim, as he's walking in, most people will go straight to the head table. Governor Gilmore is stopping off at every single table, shaking everyone's hands, stopping for pictures and stuff like that. And then Governor Allen does the exact same thing a few years later when he's there. And I think that's what. And both of those dinners were big turnout dinners, Gilmore as well as Governor Allen. Both were great dinners, very memorable.
one of the dinners that sticks out in my
And,
mind was when we had Larry Eagleburger.
mm-hmm, that was a dinner.
And I'm like, that guy. I mean, was by the time he was a Lincoln Day dinner, he was well past his prime. I hate to say.
Yeah, well, it's funny. Is that somebody was telling me his son is telling him, wrap up, and he goes, "Oh no, I got more time. They want to hear more."
That
And
almost sounds like people my wife noticed. I don't know, it was a year or a year and a half, a couple of years ago or whatever it was. We so in at church we have different members of the congregation speak
mhm,
every week, right? So it's not like a lot of churches where you have a priest or a pastor or whatever giving a sermon.
yep, mhm,
It is the people in the congregation that are asked to speak on certain topics. And we had this one woman who was speaking, and she went on. There's a finite amount of time we have for these meetings, and she was going on, and my wife, she noticed that the husband who's sitting, in the pews was trying to get her attention. It's like your time's up, and she just never saw him. It just kind of like
well,
blew past it all.
and that's a big thing about public speaking. I don't know if you remember, we had a convention where Dave Wallace, our friend, he was running for Congress, I believe, and he spoke, and we said he had 2 minutes. He went on for like almost 15 minutes.
Yeah, so that's some people cannot speak. You can tell them 2 minutes, but that they're not geared for that.
Yeah, and I think that's why we should bring back the gong from the Gong Show. And you hit the gong when they hit that minute. I
Hey,
tell you,
look, I've got to speak in church
uh-huh,
next a week from Sunday, but it's not my
mhm.
it's not my congregation. I'm guest speaking in a Spanish unit, uh,
Mhm.
and they'll have translation. So basically, the timing is I have 7 minutes to talk because they figure it's going to take about 7 minutes to translate what I say. Because
Mhm.
I'll say a few words, translate, say a few words, translate,
Mhm.
and it's going to go on. So it's it won't be very smooth because the translation is you're going to it's going to go be back and forth and everything like that. But I'm thinking like 7 minutes. I can do 7 minutes,
Yeah,
and I
and
will watch the clock.
mhm. Well, I mean, you're trained more, and you've done this. You've spoken to organizations and stuff. You've been doing this for a while. It's basically the novices, the first time candidates that seem to
Hey,
have
I,
the
I
issues.
even I even had my first teleprompter experience last week.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because Young and I are the guest speakers for a church event something that'll air this Sunday night. So
Hmm.
they pre-record this thing, and then they have all these elements they have to put together, and then they edit it, and they just somebody basically goes at they schedule it, and then they hit the button or whatever, and the thing just goes live for 30 or 40 minutes or whatever. So both
Hmm.
Young and I had to speak, but they use an iPhone with our text, with our talks, and it's
Yep.
mirrored into basically the teleprompter. And so we're sitting there. I have never used one of those before. It takes a little getting used to, you know?
Yeah. I'm actually going to be doing that. Jeff and I've been shooting commercials for me, and I'm pretty good at off the cuff. But I think we found out that it's probably better to use a teleprompter. I mean, they're decent, but I do, like sometimes you do get the uhs, and you do kind of get distracted
Yeah,
by,
right. And
hey, look, that guy's building a house behind his own house.
yeah, I mean, I, we had one at AIM that was, it was set that we bought when we were doing some stuff. And so it was
Hmm.
set up for like, I think about a 9.7-inch iPad.
Hmm.
So it had a bigger mirror. So
Yeah.
that's better. I mean, iPhone, it's very difficult to put it in there. You can, if you want to make it bigger, then sometimes the sentences, it doesn't work quite right. So I think if you use a teleprompter, you ought to use one that's sufficiently good, decent size. iPhone, you can do it with the iPhone, but if you had one that was set up for the iPad or whatever, then you do a whole lot better. But the rigging is going to be a little heavier on that. But I realized when I was doing that it didn't make a difference if I got ahead of it or whatever I paused, because in the
Hmm.
editing they'll compress all that, you know.
Yep.
So that's better than the off the cuff stuff sometimes.
Yeah, but I think I know what do you call it? Paul Wyrick. He used to always do everything off the cuff. He would he didn't use a teleprompter when he'd do his direct line show or whatever. He didn't use cue cards or anything like that.
Yeah, and we know politicians, and we know lots of speeches are given using the prompter.
Hmm.
But we have a president who, I mean, without the prompter, he's dead in the water, right?
I tell you, yeah. And if you think about it, the president has been a dismal failure. Like his meeting with Xi Jinping today, well, they have to, and you have Jen Psaki today going, oh, the Tricoms have to decide on their own where they want to stand. I'm sorry, I'm ready to say, if you're not with us, you're against us. Frankly, let's go after the Indians, the Brazilians, anybody. You can stand with the good guys, you can stand with the evil. And if you stand with evil, we basically treat you like evil. And I think that will that will send a message really fast for at least the Brazilians, the Indians, and the other countries that rely more on us than they do on the Russians. What are the Russians going to do for you? You know, and the Chinese are trying to take over the other people.
Yeah, let me ask you, Dwight, your opinion. I mean, because we've talked about this on the show about,
Hmm.
China they have their desire on Taiwan, and they've had that for a while,
Yep.
but they seem to be getting, much closer to that. They're becoming a little more aggressive, after the
Yep.
crackdown in Hong Kong and everything like that, and
Hmm.
some of their test firing missiles and all these other things, their actions, military actions, naval actions, whatever. Do you do you think that the Chinese, military, the army, their whole facility, do you think they're better, strategically than the Russians? Because the Russians have botched this thing.
Yeah. The Russians have had more dead in 3 weeks than we've had in 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan.
It's unbelievable. It's
Yeah.
unbelievable. I mean,
It's
they're
like,
losing. They've lost like what, 4 brigadier generals?
yeah.
I mean,
I
I
want
was
to get
reading.
some bumper stickers made up that says, Ukraine, Cyrillic for Afghanistan. Like, how the liberals would drive around, you see them downtown Bethesda, anywhere in Montgomery County, saying, Iraq, Arabic for Vietnam.
Yeah. I mean, look. I mean, we're at what? So this, I guess, if you depending on if you count the first day they went in, I think this is, like day 23 or whatever it is, or something like that. So this is
We
easily,
liberated Kuwait in about 3 weeks.
yeah, this is easily like at least 20 days longer than Putin thought he was going to be in there.
Yeah. I mean,
And
and
the
here's
more,
the terrain of Kuwait is very similar to Ukraine, very flat. I mean, we've liberated Kuwait and went into Iraq within about I think it was 3 weeks, a little more than 3 weeks. I think we finished off. We expelled the Iraqis out of Kuwait and got them, And I mean, here we are, 3 weeks into this war. It kind of reminds me of back when the Civil War's first battle of Bull Run happened. You had Union families going there packing picnic lunches. They thought the war would be over in a few hours, and basically, evidently, the war was going to take more than a few hours because they got the Union Army didn't fare too well at the first Battle of Bull Run. Kind of reminds me of that episode of Deep Space Nine when the founders get expelled from Deep Space Nine, and she goes, "Looks like this war is going to take a little longer than we thought." And today he had that little pep rally in a stadium. He had today, which I thought was that was very bizarre. And
yeah, I mean, I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal. I mean, they've been, yeah, just like everybody else, they've been writing a lot of articles about what's been going on over there. But this they had the kind of one standoff in one of these cities that was one of the key places, and they repelled the Russian army, and they're going around now collecting the bodies, but they have to be careful. A lot of them are booby trapped.
Yep.
And they're putting them in cold storage and stuff like that, and all this. But the coroner there, he's kind of like, what he'd like to do is basically, fly them over Russia and then drop all the bodies in Russia just to show the Russians, the people,
Mm-hmm.
how many military people, the soldiers they're losing. This is incredible that this group of, some were trained in the military, but you've got these, this defense force, was it the Territorial Defense Force? You've got a bunch of volunteers, they've gone out and they've picked up arms and they're doing their best to defend this country. And they are, they're out maneuvering, they're beating back large in many sectors. If they have to get into this ground war, they're doing a pretty darn good job here. And it's really put, Russia back on its heels on this. And,
and today they fired a bunch of cruise missiles near the NATO border, near the border to Poland. I mean, this is like the closest they've been, and it's like, oh, come on, Vladimir Putin? Are you going to pull a Nixon and start bombing Cambodia?
Well, they hit some base that was near the Polish border earlier this week, and I'm like, okay, now I mean, NATO's been watching. There are nations there that are part of this alliance that have been kind of waiting to see what's going on since Ukraine is not a member of NATO. But you start getting your actions and you start bombing things that are close to NATO borders, NATO country borders. Yeah. Then you've got a problem. NATO will not be able to sit back and just watch it. I think that they have to show some strength. And Putin would be a total idiot if he actually tries to challenge NATO, because I think at this point there's more the NATO alliance is stronger now, at least philosophically, than they've been in a long
Mhm.
time. I think they see this threat. They see that Putin, he's not hitting military targets, he's hitting civilian targets. There was a picture, I don't know if you saw this, of like was it, baby buggies and car seats or
Yeah.
whatever, representing the children that have been lost in this, you know, and you're like, yeah, there's no good reason, to have this war, this invasion, when you're killing innocent civilians, innocent women and men, women, and children. This is a travesty, and Putin. Look, I'm glad that Biden has called him out in a sense. Called him a war criminal and thug and all this kind of
Mhm.
stuff. Putin
After how many
obviously,
days? After roughly about after three
or it
weeks.
took him long enough. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like President Reagan or President Bush 43, or even Bush 41, even Bill Clinton maybe would have done it after day one, not after day 21.
Yeah, this is once again, I think, an example of where Biden is, they don't really know what to do, partially because they've been so beholden to the left
Mhm. Yeah,
wing
and
part
I'll
of the
tell you,
party
yeah.
smells of ratcheting against war. Will bring out the
Mhm.
left wing part of the party saying, look, we're a bunch of pacifists, we don't want war. But
Mhm.
if Biden wants to survive,
Well,
he needs
mhm.
he needs to break away.
Yeah, and here's something else that kind of is a little bit on the irritating side. I mean, Mark Levin made a great point last night about the neo-isolationist Republicans who are like, "Oh, we should." I mean, setting arms is not sending soldiers. Supporting doing we did lend lease for the British during World War II. Not a single American soldier was sent over there to fight. You know, we were sending them ships, we were sending them armaments, we were doing whatever we had to do to keep the British from going before from being taken over by the Nazis. This would be
Yeah,
pretty much very similar to Lend Lease.
is it wrong with positioning some of our carriers or
Yeah,
whatever? They're
yeah,
just as kind of a reminder to Putin
yeah.
that you push this thing, we will get involved. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you could, there's nothing to me. I don't see anything wrong with having our troops very nearby. Have them stationed on the
Yeah,
border, right? Get kind of ready.
yeah.
They don't have to do anything. They can kind of sit by and they can kind of watch.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're making a major mistake here when we're willing to send arms and aid and things like that, but we're really not
Mm-hmm.
committing troops for potential fight on this. But I think that the Putin will not really get a strong message until we start showing a little more force of, like, we've got people out there and we're willing to send them in, at a
Mm-hmm.
moment's necessary, right?
Yeah,
And so right now, Putin has the upper hand that way. Even though his reputation, whatever it was before, is probably totally shredded now for this
mm-hmm.
invasion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and here's the everybody's afraid of what Putin will do, right? Everybody's afraid. Oh, if we are giving them javelins, we're giving them stingers, we're giving them, so giving them MiGs is what's going to cross the line. Frankly, these MiGs from the '80s or '70s, even that's going to cross the line and make Putin mad. Shouldn't people be worried about making the West mad, making NATO mad, making Poland mad? Why, this guy's a madman, and and I think what he's doing is he's playing the card that if people think that I'm going to use nuclear weapons, they won't. They'll shut up and let me do what I want to let me be, so to speak. And I think it's. I know it's a risky gamble, but I'm willing to bet he's bluffing. He is not. He's not going to use nuclear weapons because nuclear weapons brings a whole new problem for him to use. Frankly, using
Yeah, I agree with that. I think this is to be called, and
yeah.
it's that fear, the no-fly zone issue and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. administration needs to take a share, and not let Putin get away with all this. I mean, this, here we are, we've entered week number 4. This is kind of
Yeah,
ridiculous.
yeah. He's got a quagmire there.
Yeah, I mean, you were mentioning the terrain. Every time I think about the terrain, I mean, they had Russia obviously failed in Afghanistan, but that terrain, if you're trying to take, you're trying to launch a war in Afghanistan with that terrain, that is really difficult. I mean, vastly different things. So I do wonder if Putin thought, okay, look, we screwed up big time in Afghanistan, but we that was probably not going to be very winnable because we didn't know the terrain, and the terrain was terrible. It's bad for the invaders in an area where the home team basically knows where everything is and where they can hide and where they can ambush you. In this case, I think Putin was, I mean, he really thought he had this thing. He was overconfident, and the strategy was bad. Their army has not really. If they don't, I don't think they learned anything strategically out of Afghanistan. I mean, their forces are still ill trained, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're heavily demoralized because, they're bombing a lot of places, they're killing a lot of people, most civilians, but they're really struggling to win anything big to really control the country. So
I mean,
after 4 weeks, you're stuck. Ugh.
And this is very, this is very, one, we learned after Vietnam, we learned what to do, what not to do. We have the Weinberg document, the overwhelming force of what you need to do to commit. He did use overwhelming force, but, he underestimated the will of few. He actually thought they were going to be welcomed as, liberators opposed to invaders. And even the Russians who live in Ukraine are fighting the invading Russians,
Right. Well, I mean, right. I mean, and I think we've talked about, the Russians that were demonstrating in the streets. Plus, we had that thing that happened since the last time I think
on the 15th, I think. Yeah.
When we had that Russian, on Russian TV, we had the woman get up behind with the sign, berating the whole war situation and everything like this. Putin does not have the people really behind him. I mean, they have shut down, any avenue that they can think of to prevent their, the citizenry of learning what's really going on, because they saw those demonstrations and they realized they had a problem, so they did away with that. And so now you go back to this kind of communist era, government controlled, state run media where only the government tells you whatever's going on and there's nothing else. Independent media gets shut out. But yeah, I mean, you've got Russians. You have Russians that are fighting against Russia, that are, because they see this as just a naked act of aggression, which it is. And Biden, okay, if Biden is supposed to be the leader, the president of the United States is supposed to be the leader of the free world, then please, Mr. President, step up and be the leader of the free world. Okay, defend freedom, defend this country. We have a bunch of Republicans who voted against sanctions, in the House to Russia because they think, Zelensky is not is not a good guy either. I'm not, I don't think Americans or a lot of other people are saying that Zelensky is a saint.
Yeah.
But his country's under siege, and he is a heck of a lot better than Putin.
Well, here's the thing. Okay, Ferdinand Marcos, the Shah of Iran, Augusto Pinochet. We had what's his name? The Suharto family in Indonesia. We backed them. Were they Boy Scouts? No, but they were, they were on the right side of history. They kept the communists at check. And I'm sorry, that's good enough for me. I don't buy this argument that some Republicans are buying that, oh, the Nazis are running. I mean, these are Republicans that are saying stuff. You got that woman running in 34A Hollingsworth who has shown solidarity with Vladimir Putin. She is, basically a Russian, basically a stooge for Putin. She is, and there's radio talk show guys that are doing that too. I mean, I'm kind of a little, I know people say, oh, you're siding with MSNBC and the Lincoln Project. No, I'm not. Okay. I'm a Cold War warrior. I remember the Cold War. You dopes don't know what the hell you're talking about. You people get into politics 5 minutes and you think you know everything. You don't know everything, frankly. The problem is we have, people that I was kind of shocked when I heard, what's her name? Sean Duffy's wife on Fox News, though. She goes, well, it's kind of like we've got the Monroe Doctrine has nothing to do, she kind of implied that, just like we wouldn't like foreign powers coming into our hemisphere, but that's not really what the Monroe Doctrine was all about. It was about the no new colonies and intervention, no interference in our hemisphere. And President Kennedy used that beautifully to keep the Russian missiles out of Cuba. But it's not the same. This is not
Rachel Campos stuff.
Yes, yeah. On was it Monday or Tuesday? She said that, and I'm like, she goes, we wouldn't, it's like, good point, but this does not apply. We are not threatening the Russians. We are not going to invade Russia. Ukraine was never going to invade Russia. This is basically just blatant bully tactics by Vladimir Putin trying to reconstitute the empire. And I'm sorry, that's just not going to happen because the other republics are part of NATO. You do that, you're going to have a whole mess of trouble. And I don't think your buddies in China are going to be going to bail you out at that point.
Yeah, I think that's right. If China was going to do something, I think they might have done something by now. But but China, they've got their own problems. They've been dealing with a lot of stuff internally. The booming growth of China from the past several years seems to have faded. Their growth, their GDP rates about half of what it was before. They've cracked down on a lot of those companies like Alibaba and Pinduoduo and all these other things. They've been doing that. There were some of those Chinese companies were some of the hottest stocks in the world, and they cratered after China decided to crack down on them. And there was a lot of free markets capitalism stuff going on there. Maybe there was a few things that were not quite on the up and up, but China's actions wiped out a lot of wealth in that country as a result of that. Which I'm not sure that was. I'm not really sure whether or not that was their aim, or maybe it was. Maybe they thought some of these Chinese billionaires were going to get a little bit too powerful and doesn't fit into the communist system. But I think they have a lot of problems. And they're struggling with COVID. They've got COVID issues that they can't seem to resolve right now. And I think those are things that we don't have time to deal with Russia's stupid invasion of Ukraine. We've got our own problems back home that we've got to resolve first. We can't stretch ourselves into something else. And if you're China, even though you're a huge market for the West, we've seen in the last 3+ weeks here what happens when you get a concerted effort to basically put some sanctions down and get the pressure on there where Western companies have many of them have pulled out. Not all of them. Some of them are a little bit entangled. I think it was Burger King said that their Russian franchisee refuses to close.
Yeah, well, they took over.
They can't do anything about if a franchisee, says franchisee says they're not going to close. But anything that was company owned, they can shut down. And so there's still some Western companies that are operating businesses, but majority of them have gone out. The ruble is has cratered. That's been a problem for them. The bank, the interest rates have been they're now 20% in Russia. Their economy. They almost defaulted, except the U.S. allowed them to go ahead and make their payment to keep them going. But they've got a lot of economic problems that are being drawn up on this. The fact that we've got people saying we're not going to accept Russian oil and Russian gas. They're trying. They've turned to the Chinese to buy some, but there's no real market for their stuff right now.
Yep. And I think one of the things is, the other thing they've done is they took over the McDonald's. They turned the M on its side. I think it kind of reminds me of McDowell's on Coming to America. That's where Eddie Murphy and Arsenio had their jobs working at McDowell's, and he was always getting like lawsuit threats from McDonald's.
Yeah,
He
yeah. I mean,
goes,
I think I mean, BP had they had invested in the Russian oil company, the Rosneft, and they're basically figured that they're going to have to write that investment to like zero. So that's going to cost them 20 to 25 billion dollars
mhm,
to go out. That's probably one of the biggest stakes in Russia. A lot of companies, they had business there,
mhm.
but to their bottom line in the long run, it probably won't affect them that much. It wasn't
Yep.
not as big as market as China, but I think even if you're China, you're thinking like, well, would these Western companies pull out if we aided and did things? I think they would start to. I think they might start to disentangle themselves from some of that, and start, and then the fewer Western dollars flowing into China is not what China wants. They want that. They want that influence. They want our IP. If we're not there, it's
Yep.
harder for them to get our
And
IP.
yeah, and that's brings me to the Indians who are playing their neutrality card. Come on, it is 2022. You know, pick a side. Don't do this neutrality nonsense like they did all through the Cold War, where they were leaning to the Soviets because Indira Gandhi was a socialist herself. She was kind of a fellow traveler um, for the Soviet right. I mean, come on, take a side. I mean, um, Modi is another one. He's being very pro Russian. It's like come on, you're buddies with Donald Trump. Why are you being such a Russian sycophant? Frankly, it's like get over yourselves. It's like you know, you need to pick. It's like another Star Trek reference, number two, for those who are keeping track. Gul Dukat always sided the losing side. I mean, are you going to do the same thing? Do you have a habit of picking the losers in these things? You guys sided with the Soviets, and that didn't work out good. And now you're siding with the Russians. You think that's going to work any better? We've got all the high cards. They don't. Frankly.
Yeah,
And
but apparently Biden doesn't think so.
Biden's an idiot. I mean, honestly, it's like I don't think we've ever had this kind of mentally deranged, incompetent buffoon of a leader in this country. I mean, it's like this guy is like I don't know. I'm lost for words of how inept this guy is. This guy thinks I mean, he cares more. Let me tell you, if we threatened his ice cream supply, I bet he'd get serious with it. If the Russians were to seize, basically like come to Pennsylvania and seize all the dairy farms and stop ice cream manufacturing, that would get his attention, because that's all he wants to do is go in the basement, have his ice cream and cookies,
See,
and
to me, if you're at a loss for words, that's a big deal.
it is, but you can hear more about this next week at the Anne Arundel County Lincoln Day dinner next Wednesday with Ambassador Gilmore. I mean, Ambassador Gilmore is very approachable. Walk up to him and say, "Hey, Ambassador, what do you think of this whole Ukraine thing?" He will tell you. He was there. He was dealing with those people. And he saw this stuff coming before. And because Joe Biden's such a partisan hack, he basically removed him as ambassador on day one. It was just like, why would you do? So it's okay when Democrats fire all the Republican appointees on day one, but when President Trump does it 3 months later, that's a big deal. Which is laughable.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we definitely saw that during that transition that liberals got up in arms for a lot of the things that Trump was doing that way, but that has been a tradition, right? Is that
Yeah.
those people that were there because of party politics, they should be removed. It should be the Republicans should get those jobs back.
Well, remember, we have Joe Biden conducting a purge at Voice of America. Anybody that donated to Trump was fired from Voice of America. It's like, I mean, Fauci's at GS15. President Trump could have fired him, and he should have fired him. Buddy, did you hear Fauci is warning about another COVID strain that might come, and we might have to mask up and go on lockdown again? I mean,
Well, I've heard there's some stuff going on in like UK and other places, but what I had read was that it would not be as serious than we had. So and we tend to lag the other countries in terms before we. But I don't know. I mean, look, it's like at some point in time, you and I both know that we just have to go on and live our lives without having all this government intervention, all this fear. I mean, look, if you want to wear a mask, I don't care. I mean, I find people pretty goofy. I mean, I was at the gym yesterday. I was telling my wife, I said, I drove up to the gym. I parked in the afternoon, and I was sitting in my car for a couple minutes, and I was watching these two ladies by their cars talking outside. So I think they had just finished the gym. While they were talking, one of the women was masked up. Listen, and the unmasked woman, she drove off, and I went into the gym, and I came back out. That woman was still there. She was playing around doing something in her car, and yesterday it was a nice day, and she's out there. She's still there with the mask on. It's like, you're all alone. You're outside. I mean, what is the deal, people? But that's. I mean, if you want to do it, okay. I'm not going to argue about it. I think it's goofy, but I'm not going to argue about it.
I went to a candidates forum at MC after the mask mandates were lifted, and I didn't bring my mask in. I put a mask on because they asked me to, but I think it's stupid, And I thought it was funny when Hans Riemer had to be told to put his mask on by the moderator.
I mean, there are some places where it still says in Montgomery County, where it's like, establishment will say like mask is required, but it's like, I just ignore it,
Yeah.
Because I don't think they're going to do anything about it.
Well, I went to Rio to meet Frank Nice, who's running for delegate in District 19. Great guy.
What's his name again?
Frank Nice.
Okay.
And he basically, we're there, and they have mask up Rio. Rio still has a mask mandate.
All the shops?
Yeah, evidently. I walked, but they didn't say anything. I walked in without a mask inside the corner bakery, no mask. Everything was fine. And
I'll be checking that out one of these days, because BurgerFi just opened up a location there. So.
What did they? Okay.
Yeah, it has Young's so far favorite onion rings.
Mm-hmm. And I tell you, so few places serve onion rings nowadays. As in restaurants or even fast foods. I don't know what it is. Nobody likes onions, or what it is.
So Young she thought that Popeyes used to serve onion rings.
Yeah, I would say McDonald's also had onion rings for a while.
Yeah, I don't know. So like the ones at Burger King are about the size of a quarter or something like that, right? They're really small. Mm-hmm. Whereas, real onion rings like the ones at BurgerFi and Habit Burger is not bad either. But they're onions. I mean, this is one of the things is that when you bite into them, you're biting into basically, how they've peeled and they've done the whole onion. So it's not just like one little piece that you slurp up. It's a pretty good sized thing. I mean, they're not cheap, but we're like, when they're done right and they're tasty, you don't care. It's good.
Yeah, well, I think Jerry's used to have onion straws where they cut the rings in half and deep fry those, which were pretty good too. Which I think Jerry's is now out of business. They are no longer in business in the area, I think.
I don't remember last time I saw one, but I
still
remember the first. Wasn't the first Jerry's on University Boulevard in Wheaton?
Yes, which is now Alito's. It's funny, Alito's. Yeah, and it was also a University Arcade before it was a Jerry's. It used to be University Arcade, and then that became Jerry's, and Jerry's went under, and then it became Alito's, and good Republican owners and the Alito's in Wheaton. And they also have the Lido's on Rockville Pike across from Best Buy in that weird little shopping center. next
Oh
to
yeah,
Woodloch Country Club.
yeah, right, yeah, right.
It's like
Yeah.
a weird building. Yeah.
Is that the one that's like 2 stories or something?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we've got the one. We've been to the one over here near my house, but I hate that parking lot.
Yeah, I do too. The one by the Rita's Ice.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, if you're driving your big truck, it's not really good.
No, I did, and it was interesting getting out of there. Yeah.
It was hard enough for me to get out of there, and I'm driving a sedan, right? Jeez.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
I think
I just want to say, I mean, the thing about Jerry's though is that it was just the one shop for the longest period of time, and then it
mhm.
expanded, and it was like all over the place.
Yep. And there was one. We used to go to one by. There was one in Four Corners. We used to go to at lunchtime, every now and then. Now that's gone.
Hey,
And
my parents, we used to eat fairly regularly at a little Chinese restaurant that was in Four Corners when I was a kid. So
is
you
it
go
not there
back,
anymore?
yeah, it's gone. You go back 50 years in time, and there was a good little Chinese restaurant there.
Yeah, I
My
know
pa-
exactly. It was by the
my
bakery.
father was pretty particular about the Chinese restaurants he would
Hmm.
eat in or get food from. They had to reach a certain state, and there were only a handful that ever met that. And that one was there, and then there was like a
What about the one
Shanghai
in?
or something in Silver Spring, behind where all those apartments are, in the Spring Street area, kind of
Yeah.
thing like that.
Hmm.
There was one there that ran for a long period. I think it's still a Chinese restaurant, or was years ago, but just
Hmm.
different name, different ownership. And then the Far
Hmm.
East up in Rockville, so just a handful of restaurants made the cut for my father.
Did you not like the one in Kent Mill Shopping Center, the Chinese place?
Oh, Chin and Lee, that was okay for
Yeah.
carry out. That was just that didn't that wasn't the place my parents. I think I may have ordered from there at one point in time, but I don't think my parents ever did.
Hmm.
Or I may have had to right there when my mom she wanted like wonton soup or something like that, and it was the closest thing we could get to before I was driving or something like that.
Hmm.
So yeah,
And
good old Moco memories.
yeah, I tell you, also before the Jerry's, that area, there used to be a RV dealer, and before the RV dealer, there used to be it was called the Stonewall Inn or something. There was like a restaurant there. It was like Mrs. K's, but it was there. And
How do you remember all of that? I'm just trying to think of Jerry's. I mean, I think there's a pawn shop over there still or something, and in that area.
no,
Wheaton
they've
was
never. I don't.
Wheaton is an interesting area because it's kind of like there's a bunch of shops here, there's a bunch of
Yeah,
shops there, and the bowling alley was down
yeah.
over there, and the little
No, this I
tavern.
was talking about. This is in Four Corners where the Stonewall Inn used to be.
Uh,
And
I'm
after
trying to
that
think.
went away. After
Well,
that went away.
I remember the Fred and Harry's.
Yeah. Well, this is on the other side, where the Jerry's is. There used to be an RV dealership there,
Hmm.
and that was in before the RV dealership, there was a Stonewall Inn restaurant. And the RV dealership, honestly, they moved from there to Laurel or over to Bridge Cheney. I forget where, but they did move. And then the next thing, they're gone because who's buying RVs now? Although now there's a resurgence in RV travel.
Wow.
But we had,
That's probably getting killed by high gas prices.
oh yeah, you know,
And everything else.
and we've got, yeah.
I was I was
So
I
we've
was
got,
going to say though, I just kind of wanted to get your reaction as we get closer to the end here though.
mhm.
In terms of the gas prices, you know, I I had to go up to Gaithersburg to go up to a bank and get something done with Young. And as we're driving down Woodfield Road, I'm just kind of looking at the gas prices, and this was like at
Well, they did pass the gas tax holiday.
yeah, right, about 2:20 in the afternoon or 2:25 or whatever I think it was.
Hmm. Hmm.
And we got the business done. We are coming on the way back. We drive back the same way, and all of a sudden we saw the Liberty gas station in Woodfield. It went from 419 to 383 in the span of an hour, right? And I'm
Yeah,
like, what the heck going on here? Because as we get to the intersection of Snowfur and Woodfield, Exxon is still 439, and the Shell that's closer to my home, that's a little further down, was still what I think 445 or whatever. And I'm like, okay.
Mhm.
So then I realized that it was the gas tax. So Liberty went the full 36 cents to effect right away, and they stopped collecting the tax and they posted new signs, right? And so then
Mhm.
then I'm looking like, okay, they're now, you know, make them 56 cents cheaper than the Exxon, you know,
Mhm.
just down the street from where Gentleman Jim's is, right?
Yeah.
And then when I went to get
By the way,
some
I
cherry,
felt.
the Shell station had lowered their price by 18 cents. Tax fell, is 36 cents. Where's that 18 cents you're supposed to, the consumer is supposed to save? So this thing
Oh,
here,
it's going in their pocket.
yeah. See, my thing here is that look, like a lot of other states, and the governor and the legislatures, we would ease pain at the pump, and this would be right. Now, for votes, I understand
Mhm.
this is why you do this because it's kind of an immediate effect. If you want,
But honestly, 30
I don't,
days is not enough. I think.
30 days, and it's not really going to amount to a whole lot for casual drivers. If you're driving a lot, it'll mean a little bit more. I think if you're gonna allocate how many ever millions of dollars
Mhm.
gas tax kind of thing, why don't you translate that to something for every taxpayer in Maryland and send them $100 or $200 or whatever the amount would be, and
Mhm.
that way they would guarantee they'd get something tax,
Mhm.
because what I observed today is that some stations immediately went ahead and enacted it and others didn't, or others only did half of it. The full effect of what's going on, it's not going to have as big an impact if you get that disparity. And there is no way initially to figure out what the heck is going on with these stations. So why don't you just give the
Mhm.
money to the people directly rather than have this whole kind of a thing going on here? I'd do better financially if they would just send me $100.
Yeah. I mean, and let's be honest. What a surplus really is an overcharge. It's not their money; it's our money. They should just give it back to us. Frankly, at the end of the day, you know.
And a lot of
But
states have decided to cut taxes. You notice, except for this thing, which is really a voter ploy anyway, a vote ploy,
oh
is
yeah,
that the legislature really hasn't. They have all this money. They really didn't think about what would help people. With inflation, is cut their taxes.
yeah. Well, Joe Biden's TikTok summit said go buy an electric car.
Well, that's
Yet
the other thing too. I mean,
California's.
I'm curious about what your opinion about this, because I'm really bothered by the thing that where Biden had, they hold this kind of press briefing or whatever you want to call it, and they had all these social media influencers, TikTokers and whatnot,
Mhm.
attending and giving them
Why
like
weren't
this,
we invited to this though?
as if these people were journalists and some experts, in international affairs, so that they
Yes.
could go out and push why the administration, what their policies were on the Ukraine, on this Ukraine Russian invasion kind of thing like this. And it's like, wait a minute. It is like, to me, this is almost as bad as Russian propaganda at this point. You've targeted these people because they're going to reach the young people, and then try to
Hmm.
influence them, saying like, we're doing good. We don't want all this other stuff. We're doing exactly what we should be doing, right? We shouldn't be doing any more than we are doing to help Ukraine. Which is kind of, to me, the bottom line of what the Biden
Yeah.
administration
So
is doing.
honestly, these are the same people that were saying, "Oh, we shouldn't go into war against Germany." It's not. It's not our problem. This and that. And back then we didn't have the internet. We didn't know. Okay, this time nobody's going to be able to say, "Oh, we never knew the Russians were bombing hospitals, birthing centers." We know what's happening. We've got. It's like we can either let you can either let evil prosper or you stand up to evil, and that's how simple it is. And I hate to say it, Joe Biden decided to say, "Oh, I'm going to stand with evil and let it prosper because I'm going to bury my head in the sand." You
Yeah,
know.
I mean, and from the get go, I always felt that, watching this thing is just that this is a battle between good and evil, and a lot of other people denied that. Yeah, they were in denial. They said no, because there
Well,
were so many people, like some of those Republicans, that thought that Zelensky was going to be as bad as Putin. I mean, look, the thing that I like Dan Crenshaw,
Hmm.
but you got to wonder what happened with Dan Crenshaw because he goes off. I mean, the stuff he said about Zelensky, the Russians are using that in Russia. They're playing it back. His criticism of
Well,
Zelensky.
Madison Cawthorn said something similar too. Where he said or he went off on Zelensky. It's like you guys, we're Republicans. We've been on the right side of history. Let's not start now by going on the wrong side of history. Frankly, we need we're the great arsenal of democracy. We're the party that funded the Contras. We're the party that funded UNITA in the Angolan Civil War. We are the party that stood up for national self-determination after World War II. One of the conditions we gave to the European powers is to get Marshall Plan money is get rid of your colonies. If you don't, have free and open elections in your colonies, give them independence, you don't get a penny of the Marshall Plan. And that is the tradition of the Republican Party. We have always stood. I mean, when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, what did we do? We put together a coalition and we drove out Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. What happened after 9/11? We put together a coalition of the willing and we liberated the good people of Iraq and Afghanistan. Unfortunately, Joe Biden came and just put the Taliban back in charge. President Bush got rid of them, and then Joe Biden comes in and lets the Taliban have free reign. And by the way, here's something. You have the freely elected Afghan president. What does he do? He gets on a plane and flies out of Afghanistan. Zelensky, he stays and fights. And the Afghan president had a whole lot of American military hardware at his disposal to use. Frankly,
Yeah, and I think on Zelensky too. I mean, by staying in there and doing what he's done, I think his stature on the world stage has improved a great deal.
Yeah.
People who doubted him and wondered, I mean, whether or not the guy was a comedian and then he became elected president. He's shown a lot of resolve, and I think the Ukrainian people have really rallied around him, saying like, "Gosh, that's a leader. That's a guy who he's willing to go down with the ship, so to speak, if necessary."
Yep.
And he wasn't going to just abandon the country. But you're right. That's a pretty good comparison. Zelensky versus the president again. Yeah, that guy took off as fast as he could.
Yeah, I mean, this guy is the Winston Churchill of this generation. Frankly, like Winston Churchill, he went out on the streets, after the during the bombings, after the bombings, before the bombings, he was out there. This guy's out there. I mean, this guy took an enormous risk talking to the United States Congress the other day, And then what do you have? You have people on talk radio go, well, I didn't appreciate him saying this about, Americans don't want to fight, and you got some of our Republican friends on talk radio going, oh, it's not our fight. I don't want. He goes, we got problems at home ourselves. That we have never been that country that says, oh, we got to take care of our in-house first before we can help other people. We are a generous country. When you had the Armenian earthquake, we raised money to send money for relief efforts, and that was in the Soviet Union days. That was like, that money was pretty much going to have an SS-20 pointed right at you and your family. Frankly, when you gave money to the earthquake relief fund, because you think it really went to the earthquake relief fund, probably ended up in the coffers of the Supreme Soviet or some Soviets. Back pocket. But here's a quick question for you, Don. Why do we keep referring to Russian businessmen as oligarchs? Like, it's, is that, we don't refer to Bill Gates or Zuckerberg or any of those Hollywood moguls as oligarchs, the media's turned it into...
Yeah, I think that's a great question. The
media's turned it into a pejorative. It's like, basically they turn oligarchs. Well, oligarchs must mean mafia, Russian. No, we call the Russian mob the Russian mob. We don't call them the Russian. These are Russian business people. It's like if Rex Tillerson of Exxon Mobil, we called him an oil baron or oil oligarch.
Yeah.
We don't.
We don't call a lot of them taking a big financial hit. They may not be too oligarchy anymore.
Yeah, I mean, we don't call Mitt Romney an oligarch, you know. I mean, he's well-to-do, or Rob Portman, or
Yeah, that's a
yeah,
good. Yeah, I mean, it seems to be something kind of uniquely Russian almost in terms of how this is developed.
yeah. It's like we know about the Russian mob. We all watch the Arrow, you know, KGB Beast and the Russian mob, you know. Yeah, we all watched Arrow. We know about that, you know. And we're at closing thoughts, Don.
That's right. We've kept it going. Amazing, huh?
Yeah, I know. Well, you know, there was a lot to talk about, you know.
Yeah.
You know, we got that crazy woman running in 34A Hollingsworth who no Republican should be voting for. And please, somebody run against her if she doesn't have a primary. Please, somebody run against her. You know, we can't have these Putin apologists, you know, in our party. People that are like, you know, oh well, maybe we can't afford to, you know. Like we were having some chats the other night, you know, Wednesday night, you know. I'm sorry, no, we're on the right side of history. Standing up to the Russians is the right thing to do, you know. But that's what Ronald Reagan would have done, you know. That's what Donald Trump would have done too, frankly.
Yeah.
But anyways, final thoughts, Don.
Okay, final thoughts. First of all, Star Trek reference. So I don't know if you saw this, Dwight, but one of your favorite people, Stacey Abrams, what has appeared on Star Trek Discovery as the United Earth President.
Yeah, and that's the closest thing she'll ever be to president.
It's the only that's the only time she'll ever be president of anything at this point in time,
I
unless
hear
she
now
gives up.
she's telling everyone to refer to her as Madam President
Yeah.
because she was president.
So I was like, it's like, why in the world
Yeah,
did they put her of all people on there? It's like, this is ridiculous when you take someone like that and put him into a show like that. It's like, I know a lot of people don't even like the show. I don't watch the show. You're my big Star Trek expert. I don't know,
I
but I mean,
hate Discovery. I
don't
do
think
not watch
having Stacey
Discovery.
Abrams improves the show.
I mean, it kind of reminds, you know, that's funny that, you know, I make a joke, but Bernie Kopel played the doctor on The Love Boat, and he also was head of chaos on Get Smart. And I forget what the show was, but he was doing a guest shot on another show. And he was actually also on That Girl too. He was also on That Girl, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, but you know, it's him and the guy that played Isaac the bartender, and they're on some show, and he goes, he just is mad because I outranked him on the ship because I was a doctor and he was a bartender, and the guy that plays Isaac goes, you do know you really weren't a doctor in real life, you know? And then there's the guy, one of the guys goes, my mother's a big Get Smart fan, and then he turns, does his chaos impressions, right? And Isaac turns to him and goes, you do know you were never head of an organization called Chaos because it never existed. But yeah, that's going to be the mayor, the woman who won't concede defeat in the Georgia governor's race, Stacey Abrams. She'll now want everyone to refer to her as Madam President because she was president of United Earth.
So I decided when you were mentioning Bernie Kopel, I decided to look up just some of the shows he was in. Yeah. So yeah, you mentioned Get Smart. Yep. I don't know if you remember the show called Lancelot Link Secret Chimp.
I do remember that. Was he on there too?
Yeah, he was on there too. That Girl, which I watched a lot of when I was young. He did some Love American Style.
Oh really? He was on Love American Style.
Bewitched.
Yeah, I do remember he was on
Doors Day Show. I mean, the guy is what an amazing actor in terms of all the things he's been on. I mean, obviously he got, the Love Boat, one of the last things that people will probably remember. But I'm saying he is, so he was born in 1933. So that means he's what? He's 89 years old now.
Yeah, 89. Yeah, 89. Yeah.
So good for him.
And he was, that was back when Hollywood didn't get preachy. I mean, the Love Boat never went political. They never said, you never had Captain Stubing complain about Reaganomics. That's why people are going on, that's why Charles can't afford to be on every episode because Reaganomics. But today they can't. You watch a television show, they can't get away from trashing the Republicans
There's
or
always,
in
you know,
general.
if it's not overt, it will be at least subtle in the things that
Yeah.
they do,
Mhm.
trying to paint a picture. Yeah, I mean that's interesting that you mentioned that type of thing today because I can't remember what it was. There was something I commented on earlier. I may have said it on Twitter or whatever. I can't remember, but just
Mhm.
or maybe it was you know, I can't remember exactly what it was, but there was something I was thinking about where it was just that it may have even been somebody's conversation on Facebook about TV shows and how I remember when I was a kid that they were entertainment, right? You'd watch it, it was
Mhm.
fun, it
Yeah.
was clean, it was enjoyable, and there were
Yeah.
basically no politics. I mean, I think one of the first shows that I can recall that started to get political or have political overtones was Cagney and Lacey. You know,
Yeah. Remember they did that show on abortion? I think Cagney or Lacey, one of them was getting an abortion or something like that, I
yeah,
guess, on
they
the
did
show.
that. They did one on apartheid too, I think, and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But then it just, you know, over time, I mean, we weren't getting that stuff on the Rockford Files or Barnaby Jones or
Mhm.
Cannon or Mannix and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
now it's really hard. It's hard to find a television show that doesn't have some
Yeah.
political thing. Yeah, I know what you know what it was. It was somebody who was complaining. It was a Facebook friend who I've never met. Her name was, I think,
Mhm.
Aisha Kreutz. I don't know her name, but she happens to be black, and she was making
Mhm.
a comment about the new Fresh Prince of Bel Air thing, the remake.
Yeah, I saw some
Twisted-
previews. It
How
is
they twisted the show. There's like a gay character, and like the father's now like a recovering alcoholic. I mean, and her thing was just like the old show was great. I mean, there was a lot of good things. I mean, it was fun, but the father was an upstanding individual and all of these
pillar of the
things.
community. He was
Yeah,
a
all this kind of stuff.
Republican.
Yeah, and she was saying like, and she was complaining, she's like, you've taken this black middle class family in essence, whatever, and you've just now ripped it apart and and just made it look like a dysfunctional family. That's not what you. And one of my other friends, I know was commenting about it, and that's when I said, yeah, it's just gone away from that. You see, particularly like that with the remakes, is that you remake a show, all of a sudden it becomes the politically correct remade
Yeah.
show, right?
Look, I mean, you probably
You've got
you
to have
watched
a
the
gay
original.
character. You've got to have
Yeah.
this character. You got to have this, and they have to be this, whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, what will happen with what was Family Ties? Can you imagine a remake of Family Ties?
Yeah, and that was pretty political. Also, I mean,
That was political, but for us, we thought it was a fun because the
yeah,
whole Reagan thing was great for
yeah,
us.
exactly. And I mean, you've watched the original Hawaii Five-O. I never watched the remake, but I did watch the originals. I mean, the remake, from everyone that tells me, was horrible compared to the original. They had no ties to the original show. They didn't have, you know, I don't know. Somebody told me the lead character was Steve McGarrett's kid, who, and that would have been a nice tie-in, but they didn't even do that. Uh, I mean, in the original show, they actually used Honolulu police officers, like the guy, who was it, the Asian character? Was it Chen Ho? He was like one of McGarrett's top guys. He got killed towards the end. Wolfat, I think, got him at the end. Like one of the last seasons, they killed off his character. But he actually was a detective in the Honolulu PD before he
Yeah,
got that acting job. But I mean, everything you can't watch. I mean, there's you've got. I mean, there's even. I mean, I tell you, there's I think maybe 5 shows I can count that don't go political. One is the Goldbergs. They don't go political. I mean, everything with the CW, they're like woke as can be. They are like really bad. Like everything from the Flash, which I do watch, to the new show Naomi. That is like gone super woke. They've gone. You've got Superman and Lois, which is not. It's probably the best one because it's not as woke. Um, but you've got. I mean, there's. Okay. Then you got the Roseanne Barr show. Uh, that I'm surprised is still on the air. Um, is
I gave up on some of the those shows on CW, particularly because you know I think it was airing on CBS at the time, the Supergirl,
yeah.
and then one of the
Oh, when it went to when it
one
went,
of the
it
characters
wasn't
was
bad.
lesbian or something like that. And I'm like,
Yeah,
that's it. I don't, I
that
I
happened.
love these
Yeah,
superhero things, but you start putting the gay characters in there. It's like
yeah.
I'm gone. I can't do this anymore.
Oh, and
And
that happened when they moved to the CW. When it was she actually had, I think, on the CBS show, her sister who turned into a lesbian when they went to the CW. She actually had a boyfriend. She was actually, I want to say, she may have even been engaged at part of the uh, the first season, and then it goes there. Then they added a transgender character who really wasn't transgender in real life, which made the transgender people really mad that they had a normal person not being transgender on the show. Uh, and it's just horrible. I mean, it's. I remember, was it? I think maybe it's season one of Superman where they made a reference to there's a Hispanic fan goes and they want to and they want to lock us all up and send us back. Actually, no, that may have been season two. I think she was a Hispanic lesbian, and she goes, "Don't you?" Because the father's like, "Don't you think you have enough problems already as it is?" This the president was Wonder. Well, actually, season one, the president was Wonder Woman. Season two was Captain Sheridan from Babylon 5, or Scarecrow from Scarecrow and Miss King. But anyways, let's get back to final thoughts. Actually, I just
yeah,
realized it's almost eight
well,
fifteen.
you mentioned transgender, and that was going to be my other final thought, which
Yeah.
was the whole furor over the University of Pennsylvania swimmer, who's
Mm-hmm.
now known as Leah Thomas, and who's who started this whole transgender process, I guess, a couple of years ago, um, he was William Thomas, and he was as a man he was a swimmer. So get this, as a swimmer on the men's team, he was ranked, in college ranks number 432. As a
Mm-hmm.
woman, he's number one. She won, I guess. She won the NCAA
It won.
500, yard freestyle. And this has created a huge furor, in terms of the transgender community, is they think this is great, but a lot of other people are saying like, look, you've now taken what in essence is a man, even though they've been undergoing the hormone therapy or whatever, the whole regimen, and you've put them into the women's events, and she's crushing it,
Mm-hmm.
and so I mean the runner up, I think, in this particular race was won like the gold in the 2021 Olympics. Okay, no slouch, but she can't compete against somebody who was born a man. You know, it's just really it's unfortunate about this. And I know that there are a lot of people who get very concerned about, oh, we have to have this as a fairness and equality and stuff like that. But
You know something?
if you want to create a separate category and have all the
Mm-hmm.
transgenders compete against each other, okay, I'll let that one go. But
Yep.
you can't put the guys who are transitioning to girls who still have a lot of male features and
Mm-hmm.
muscle mass and all these things, and have them compete against the girls, because basically every time this happens,
Mm-hmm.
they crush the girls. The girls do not
Mm-hmm.
have the physicality as the guys do, and this is not fair to those girls. I mean, this is not the way it was supposed to be. And the
Mm-hmm.
NCAA, they're a bunch of wimps. They could have stood up and stopped this, and they did. Shame on an NCAA.
Very true. And one last thought to that, I'll just say is this: the East Germans, Eric Honecker, and the East German swim team was. Maybe they should have just said our players are just transgenders.
I think that's funny as heck. I mean, that's just yeah. I mean, you bringing up the East Germans. I mean, it's like anything. It's like it's East Germans and Russia, and the Soviet Union, and anything from
Yeah,
the Eastern Bloc. We know those people. Pretty suspect.
yeah. See, Vladimir Putin, that's going to be the next thing. Vladimir Putin's going to say, I was for transgender rights before anyone in the West was.
We have a long history of supporting transgender rights.
Yes, our entire Soviet swim team, female swim team.
Yeah, if this thing got out to a wider audience, boy, would we get shredded.
Boy, that's AOC. That'd get her to line up with Putin real fast. Maybe she would she'd call up Vlad. Hey, let's do another pep rally, and I'll fly in, and I'll get up on stage with you because you're a champion of transgender rights, you know. But my final thoughts: a couple things. One, if you're fascinated by Ukraine, if you want to know the history and what's happening today, come to the Anne Arundel County Lincoln Reagan dinner, I should say, this Wednesday at 6 o'clock in lovely Annapolis, Maryland, at the Annapolis Crown Plaza. Tickets are still available. You know, tell them that Jason Trott sent you. I believe you can still buy tickets at the door. The prices are insanely low, just $125. I mean, with Biden inflation, those prices should be actually $150 to $175. But you know, old Jason and James Appel over there, you know, they're people. They're for the people. They're keeping the prices low. Prices haven't gone up in over a year for their Lincoln Reagan dinner.
What night of the week is that?
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Let me know if you want to come.
You know me. I have started a fairly rigid routine that I rarely break, which is I'm in bed by 8 o'clock most nights except for weekends.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny. Bats came out Monday night, right? And his bedtime is 9 o'clock. I go, James, are you feeling a little sleepy now because it's your bedtime?
What, he was out for Pi Day?
But yeah, he has to be. He's the treasurer. He had to be there to collect them. You'll see him next Friday at the kickoff also.
Oh, is he your treasurer?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah. And
probably wondering what he got himself into.
No, he did it last time too. He was treasurer 4 years ago for me too.
Oh, that's
funny. You know something, he'd never done it before, but he's taken to it like a duck to water. He is really detailed.
It's funny because I look at him and I'm thinking like that's like the least likely person I ever think would be a treasurer.
Yeah, I tell you who. There's another person I'll tell you after we get off who's the least likely person to be a treasurer. But Anne Arundel County Lincoln Day dinner. Also visit my website dwightfromoco.com. I got my campaign kickoff next Friday, so we will not be on. We might do something. We might actually do a live cast from there, but it'll be a little different about the politics.
I was wondering. I knew you'd say that.
It'll be a little different, but So and Direct Line will be airing a best of Direct Line next Wednesday because the host, the board operator, and the backup board operator, and the co-hosts are all going to be in Annapolis. So, all in all, Ukrainians are holding out, and things could have been a lot worse, and knock on wood that things don't get worse, and we continue the flow of weapons to the Ukrainians so they could expel the Russians out of all of Ukraine and even Crimea, frankly. I know some people say, they may have to compromise it. No, that's not a compromise. Giving up half of your land. I mean, isn't that what the Palestinians always say about Israel? When we say, why can't you just be happy with half a pie? No.
I have one more thing that just popped into my head.
Sure.
We should have a change.org petition to get Shamrock Shakes year round.
Yes, I love that idea. I love that. But if Shamrock Shakes are gone, we won't see this until February 15th, 2023.
There we go.
Yeah, so
I see that Dennis went out and got one the other day. He
got one last night. Yeah, he enjoyed it. And it was all the hype. It was everything. It lived up to the hype. And I don't know if you're coming to Ocean City, but there is a cookout in Salisbury that has their own version all year. It's like Steak and Shake. They have their Shamrock Shakes all year round. It's called a mint challenge. But yeah, that's my final thoughts. So go out and also if you're able to, redcross.org Fox Forward to help Ukrainian relief. I know they can really use it right now. So do that. And if you can, buy a ticket. Tell them that Jason Trotz sent you to the Lincoln Reagan dinner. I think you can buy tickets at the door. I'm not sure, but hey, call up the Anne Arundel County GOP and find out. Anyways, take care. See everyone in. Well, we'll do something next week. It may not be the same type of show, but
Yeah.
we'll be back next week. Take care. Good
Why
night.
is it- All right. Goodbye.